You were plan B, not the dream. Those words hit me like a sledgehammer to the gut as I sat in my rusted Ford pickup outside Jenna's bookstore. My wife of 15 years had just delivered the most honest sentence of our marriage through her cell phone to someone who wasn't me. I'm Kurt Kaminsky, and I own a used car lot on the east side of Rochester. Not glamorous work, but it pays the bills and keeps food on the table for my family. Or at least it did until today, when I discovered that my wife had been treating our marriage like a backup plan while she shopped around for something better. The autumn rain drummed against my windshield as I watched Jenna through the bookstore window, laughing with George Riker. George used to be my friend, my mechanic, the guy who helped me fix engines in my garage on weekends. Now he was leaning over my wife's shoulder, whispering something that made her giggle like a teenager. I'd driven here to surprise Jenna with lunch, thinking maybe we could salvage what was left of us. Instead, I got a front row seat to my own humiliation. When George's hand brushed against Jenna's arm and she didn't pull away, I knew this wasn't some innocent friendship. My phone buzzed. Text message from Anna, my lot manager. Mrs. Kaminsky called asking about the September receipts again. Seemed nervous. September receipts. That's when I'd noticed the credit card charges at restaurants I'd never been to, hotels in towns I'd never visited. When I'd asked Jenna about them, she'd claimed they were work-related, something about visiting other bookstores for inventory ideas. I sat there watching my wife and my former friend feeling like the biggest fool in upstate New York. 15 years of marriage, and I was just Plan B, the safety net, the reliable guy who paid the mortgage while she figured out what she really wanted. The rain stopped, and George walked Jenna to her car. He opened her door like some gentleman from a romance novel, then leaned in close. Too close. Way too close for a married woman and her husband's friend. I followed them at a distance, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. They drove to the Sunset Motel on Route 15, the kind of place that rents rooms by the hour. George parked his beat-up Camaro next to Jenna's Honda, and they walked into room 127, like they'd done it 100 times before. My phone rang, Jenna's name on the screen. "Hey, honey," she said, sweet as pie. "Working late tonight? Don't wait up." "Sure thing," I managed. "Love you." "You too." The line went quiet, and I sat there in my truck, staring at the motel room door, wondering how long this had been going on. How many nights had she worked late while I sat home watching television with our 13-year-old daughter Carrie, making excuses for why Mom wasn't around? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning with questions and rage and something else I couldn't quite name. Betrayal, maybe, or relief. At least now I knew why she'd been so distant, so critical, so eager to point out everything wrong with our life together. Carrie was doing homework at the kitchen table when I walked in. She looked up with those dark eyes that reminded me of Jenna before everything went sour. "Where's Mom?" she asked. "Working late again." Carrie rolled her eyes. "She's always working late now." Smart kid. Too smart for her own good. I went upstairs to our bedroom and started looking through Jenna's things. I felt like a creep, but I needed to know how deep this went. In her dresser drawer, hidden under some old sweaters, I found a prepaid phone I'd never seen before. The text messages told the whole story. Months of planning, scheming, talking about me like I was just an obstacle to overcome. George calling me the burden, and Jenna agreeing. Plans to drain our joint savings account. Discussions about how to make me look like the bad guy when she finally left. "Kurt's so predictable," one message read. "He'll never see it coming." Another one, "Can't wait to be free of him. You're everything he's not." And the worst one, he was never the plan. Just something to fall back on until the right guy came along. I sat on our bed, holding that phone, reading message after message of pure contempt, not just cheating, but planning to destroy me in the process, planning to take everything and leave me looking like the villain. My hands were shaking as I took photos of every message with my own phone, evidence, insurance, ammunition for whatever came next. When Jenna came home at midnight, I was waiting in the living room with a beer and a smile. "How was work?" I asked. She looked startled, like she'd forgotten I existed. "Fine, busy. You know how it is." "Sure do. Get a lot accomplished tonight?" Something flickered in her eyes. Suspicion, maybe. "Just the usual stuff. Inventory and paperwork." I nodded and took another sip of beer. "That's great, honey. Really great." She went upstairs, and I heard the shower running. Washing off the evidence, probably. Washing off George. I sat there in the dark, drinking my beer and thinking about Plan B, about being someone's backup plan for 15 years, about raising a daughter with a woman who saw me as the burden. The shower stopped, and I heard Jenna getting ready for bed. In a few minutes, she'd come downstairs and kiss me goodnight, like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just spent 3 hours in a motel room with my former friend. But something had changed in me during those hours of waiting and thinking. Something had shifted, like a gear clicking into place. If I was Plan B, then it was time to show her what Plan A looked like. The next morning, Jenna left for work with the same fake smile she'd been wearing for months. I waited until her car disappeared around the corner, then called Anna. "I need you to handle the lot today," I told her. "Got some personal business to take care of." Anna Martinez had been my right hand for 5 years. Sharp as a tack, loyal as ever, and tough enough to handle the roughest customers without breaking a sweat. If anyone could keep my business running while I dealt with my collapsing marriage, it was her. "Everything okay, boss?" she asked. "Will be soon. Just need to clean house a little." My first stop was the bank. I walked into First National with a folder full of paperwork and a story about protecting our assets from potential fraud. The manager, a nervous little guy named Peterson, listened carefully as I explained my concerns about unauthorized access to our accounts. "Identity theft is so common these days," I told him. "I'd feel better if any major transactions required both signatures." Peterson nodded sympathetically and processed the paperwork. Just like that, Jenna's access to our savings account was restricted. She could still use her debit card for normal purchases, but anything over $500 would need my approval. Next, I drove to George's apartment complex on the south side. His Camaro was parked in its usual spot, still dirty from yesterday's rain. I'd helped him work on that car a dozen times, taught him how to rebuild the engine when he couldn't afford a mechanic. I had a spare key to his place from the time he'd gone out of town and asked me to water his plants. Amazing how people forget about things like that when they're busy stabbing you in the back. George was at work, so I let myself in and looked around. The place was a mess, as usual, empty beer bottles, pizza boxes, clothes everywhere. But on his kitchen table, I found something interesting. A notebook with my name at the top of a page, followed by a list of my assets, my business income, even my insurance policies. They'd been planning this for a while. I took photos of everything, then put it all back exactly how I'd found it. On my way out, I did one small thing that would pay dividends later. I loosened the valve stems on his rear tires just enough to cause a slow leak. Nothing dangerous, just inconvenient. My phone rang as I was driving back to the lot. Jenna. "Hey," she said, and I could hear the tension in her voice. "I tried to transfer some money for Carrie's school trip, but the bank said there was a problem with the account." "Really? That's weird. I'll call them and sort it out." "It's just $500, Kurt, for our daughter's education." "Of course. I'm sure it's just a computer glitch or something. I'll handle it." Silence on the other end. Then, "Okay, thanks." After she hung up, I sat in my truck and smiled. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for her to walk into it. Anna was dealing with a customer when I got back to the lot, some college kid looking at a Honda Civic. I watched her work, admiring her technique. She knew how to read people, how to find the sweet spot between honest and profitable. Kid's got good credit and a co-signer, she told me after he left with the keys. Should be an easy loan. Good work. Listen, Anna, I might need to ask you to work some extra hours over the next few weeks. Personal stuff going on at home. She studied my face with those sharp brown eyes. Jenna? I nodded. Anna had never liked my wife, though she'd been professional enough to keep her opinions to herself. But I'd seen the way she looked at Jenna during the few times my wife had visited the lot, like she was watching a snake in the grass. You need anything, just ask, Anna said. I've got your back. That afternoon, I drove past George's workplace, a garage on the east side that specialized in foreign cars. His Camaro was sitting in the parking lot with 2 flat tires, and I could see him through the bay doors, looking frustrated as he talked on his phone, probably calling Jenna to complain about his car troubles, probably asking her to pick him up. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, Jenna's Honda pulled into the parking lot. She got out looking annoyed, like this was some major inconvenience. George threw his hands up in the air, pointing at his car, playing the victim. I followed them to a restaurant on the other side of town, staying far enough back to avoid detection. They sat in a corner booth, heads close together, having what looked like an intense conversation. Through the window, I could see Jenna gesturing angrily while George tried to calm her down. My phone buzzed with a text from her. Working late again tonight. Don't wait up. Working late. Right. I went home and helped Carrie with her algebra homework, made her favorite dinner, and listened to her talk about school drama and her friends. Normal father-daughter stuff that felt precious, now that I knew how close I'd come to losing it. Dad, she said as we were cleaning up the dishes, is everything okay with you and Mom? The question caught me off guard. Why do you ask? I don't know. You guys seem different lately, like you're not really talking to each other. Smart kid. Too smart. Sometimes adults go through rough patches, I told her. But whatever happens, you know I love you, right? She nodded, but I could see the worry in her eyes. Another thing to add to my list of grievances against Jenna and George. They weren't just destroying my marriage, they were hurting our daughter too. That night, I sat in my living room with a beer and Jenna's secret phone, reading through months of messages. The deeper I dug, the angrier I got. They'd been laughing at me, mocking my business, my appearance, my personality, making jokes about how boring I was, how predictable. Kurt thinks he's so smart, one message read, but he has no idea what's happening right under his nose. George's response, guy's a fool. Always has been. You deserve so much better. Another exchange. When are you going to tell him? Soon. Just need to make sure I get my fair share of everything first. My fair share, like she'd earned any of it. Like 15 years of marriage and building a business and raising a daughter together meant nothing. I set the phone aside and opened my laptop. Time to do some research on divorce law in New York State. Time to learn about asset protection and custody arrangements and all the other fun stuff that comes with the end of a marriage. But as I read through legal websites and forum posts from other men who'd been in my situation, I realized something important. I didn't want a divorce. Not yet, anyway. I wanted revenge. I wanted Jenna and George to feel what I'd felt when I discovered their betrayal. I wanted them to know what it was like to be humiliated, to be laughed at, to have their lives turned upside down by someone they'd underestimated. The law would give me half of everything, maybe custody of Carrie if I was lucky. But it wouldn't give me satisfaction. It wouldn't make them pay for the months of lies and mockery and planning behind my back. For that, I'd need to get creative. I spent the weekend playing the perfect husband and father. Took Carrie to her soccer game, grilled burgers in the backyard, even suggested we all watch a movie together Sunday night. Jenna seemed surprised by my sudden attention, maybe even a little guilty. You're in a good mood, she said as we sat on the couch, Carrie between us, watching some romantic comedy she'd picked. Just appreciating what I have, I replied, and squeezed her hand. She squeezed back, but I could feel the hesitation in her grip, the uncertainty. Good. Let her wonder what I was up to. Monday morning, I put the next phase of my plan into action. I drove to Jenna's bookstore and parked across the street, then called her cell phone. "Hey, honey," I said when she answered. "I'm going to be working late tonight. Got a customer coming in from Syracuse to look at that Buick." "Oh, okay. I might work late too. We're doing inventory." "Sure thing. Love you." "Love you too." I hung up and waited. Sure enough, at lunchtime, George's Camaro pulled up in front of the bookstore. He'd gotten his tires fixed, but I noticed he kept looking around nervously, like he was worried about more car trouble. They drove to a different restaurant this time, a little Italian place downtown. I followed at a distance, then parked where I could watch them through the window. Same routine as before. Intense conversation, worried looks, Jenna gesturing with her hands. While they were inside, I walked over to George's car and did something I'd learned from 15 years in the auto business. I loosened his battery cables just enough to cause intermittent electrical problems. Nothing dangerous, just annoying. Then I went back to my truck and waited. 20 minutes later, they came out of the restaurant. George tried to start his car, but nothing happened. He popped the hood and started poking around while Jenna stood beside him looking frustrated. I drove past them slowly, window down, and called out, "Having car trouble, George?" He looked up, startled. "Oh, hey, Kurt. Yeah, the thing won't start. Want me to take a look? I know a thing or two about cars." The look on his face was priceless, pure panic mixed with fake gratitude. "That's okay, man. I'll just call a tow truck." "You sure? I'm right here." "Really, it's fine. Thanks, though." I shrugged and drove away, watching in my rearview mirror as George frantically tried to figure out what was wrong with his car. Jenna was on her phone, probably calling someone to pick them up. That afternoon, Anna came into my office with a curious expression. "Your wife called," she said. "Asked if you were really here late last night." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That you left at 5:30 like always." I nodded. "Good. Always tell the truth, Anna. It's simpler that way." She studied my face for a moment. "You want to tell me what's going on?" I considered it. Anna had been loyal to me for 5 years, and I trusted her judgment. But the fewer people who knew about my plans, the better. "Just some marital issues," I said. "Nothing I can't handle. If you need help handling it, let me know." That evening, I got a text from Jenna. "Car trouble. Going to be really late tonight." I texted back, "No problem, I'll wait up." But I didn't wait up. Instead, I drove to the Rusty Nail, a dive bar on the east side where a lot of the local mechanics and construction workers hung out. It was the kind of place where gossip flowed as freely as the beer, and I knew George was a regular. I was nursing a whiskey when Tommy Kowalski, a guy who worked at the same garage as George, slid onto the bar stool next to me. "Hey, Kurt, haven't seen you in here before." "Yeah, well, trying some new places. How's business?" "Can't complain. Your buddy George has been having some car trouble lately, though. Weird electrical issues. Poor guy's been taking the bus to work." I shook my head sympathetically. That's rough. George always took pride in that Camaro. "Yeah, he's pretty frustrated about it. Been in a bad mood all week." We talked for another hour, mostly about cars and business and local sports, but when I got up to leave, I made sure to mention something casually. "If you see George, tell him I asked about him. We should grab a beer sometime soon." Tommy nodded. "Sure thing. I'll let him know." I drove home with a smile on my face. By tomorrow, George would know I'd been asking about him at his favorite bar. He'd wonder what I knew, what I was planning. The paranoia would start eating at him. Jenna was already asleep when I got home, or pretending to be. I slipped into bed quietly and lay there in the dark, thinking about the next phase of my plan. The beauty of revenge, I was learning, wasn't in the big, dramatic gestures. It was in the small things, the little inconveniences and worries that added up over time, the slow erosion of confidence and security. George's car problems were just the beginning. Soon, he'd start having other kinds of problems, work problems, money problems, social problems, and Jenna would start to wonder if her plan A was as solid as she'd thought. My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. Stay away from my car. I smiled in the darkness. George had figured out that his problems weren't coincidental. Good. The fun was just getting started. I texted back, "Don't know what you mean, but maybe you should invest in a better mechanic." No response. But I could picture him lying awake in his apartment, staring at his phone, wondering what I was going to do next. The answer was simple. Whatever it took to make them both regret the day they decided I was just Plan B. The next few days were quiet on the surface, but I was busy behind the scenes. I had Anna start asking around about George's reputation in the local automotive community. Turns out my former friend had been cutting corners on some of his side jobs, using cheap parts and overcharging customers. "Guy's got a bad reputation," Anna reported. "Most of the shops won't refer customers to him anymore." "Interesting. What kind of bad reputation?" "Shoddy work, missed deadlines, overcharging. Word is his boss at the garage is getting tired of the complaints." Perfect. George was already on thin ice professionally. All I needed to do was give him a little push. I started small. A phone call to Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman George had done some work for last month. I'd gotten her name from Tommy at the bar, who mentioned she'd been complaining about her car still making noise after George fixed it. "Mrs. Henderson, this is Kurt Kaminsky. I own a used car lot here in town, and I heard you've been having some trouble with recent repair work." "Oh yes," she said, sounding relieved to have someone to talk to. "That young man charged me $400 to fix my transmission, but it's still making the same noise." "That's terrible. Have you considered filing a complaint with the Better Business Bureau?" "I wouldn't know how to do that." "I'd be happy to help you with the paperwork. No charge, of course. I just hate to see people taken advantage of." By the end of the week, Mrs. Henderson had filed her complaint, and 2 other customers had come forward with similar stories. George's boss called him into the office for a serious conversation about quality control and customer satisfaction. Meanwhile, Jenna was getting more nervous about our financial situation. The restricted bank account was causing her problems, and she was starting to ask more questions about our money. "I need to buy groceries," she told me Thursday night, but my card was declined. "That's weird. Let me check the account balance." I made a show of logging into our online banking while she stood behind me, watching the screen. The account showed plenty of money, but her daily spending limit had been reduced to $200. "Must be some kind of security measure," I said. "I'll call the bank tomorrow and sort it out." "This is ridiculous, Kurt. I shouldn't have to ask permission to buy groceries." "You're right. It's probably just a computer glitch." But I didn't call the bank. Instead, I let her worry about it for another few days while I worked on the next phase of my plan. Saturday afternoon, I was washing my truck in the driveway when George's Camaro pulled up across the street. He sat there for a few minutes, engine running, staring at me through his windshield. Finally, he got out and walked over. "We need to talk," he said. I turned off the hose and faced him. Up close, he looked tired, stressed. His usual cocky demeanor was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. "Sure, George. What's on your mind?" "You know what's on my mind. The car problems, the complaints at work, all of it. I know it's you." I raised my eyebrows in mock surprise. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Come on, Kurt. We used to be friends. Whatever's going on between you and Jenna, leave me out of it." "Between me and Jenna? What would be going on between me and my wife?" He realized his mistake immediately. His face went pale, and he took a step backward. I just meant, you know, if you guys are having problems, what kind of problems would we be having, George? I don't know. Forget I said anything. He started to walk away, but I called after him. George, if you're having car trouble, you should really find a better mechanic. Maybe someone who knows what they're doing. He stopped, turned back to look at me, then got in his car and drove away, without another word. That evening, Jenna was unusually quiet during dinner. Carrie filled the silence with stories about school and her friends, but I could see Jenna's mind was elsewhere. After Carrie went upstairs to do homework, Jenna and I sat in the living room pretending to watch television. Finally, she broke the silence. George came by the store today, she said carefully. He seemed upset about something. Really? What about? He said you two had some kind of confrontation. I muted the television and turned to face her. Confrontation? We just talked. He was having car problems and I offered to help. He said you've been harassing him. Harassing him how? She hesitated, like she was trying to figure out how much to say without revealing too much. He thinks you're sabotaging his car. I laughed, but kept it light and casual. That's ridiculous. Why would I sabotage George's car? We're friends. Are you? Friends, I mean? Of course. Why wouldn't we be? She studied my face, looking for something. Guilt, maybe, or anger, or some sign that I knew more than I was letting on. I don't know. You just seem different lately. More, I don't know how to describe it. Different how? Calmer. Like you're planning something. I reached over and took her hand. The only thing I'm planning is our anniversary dinner next month. Unless you'd rather skip it this year? She squeezed my hand, but I could feel the tension in her grip. No, of course not. I'm probably just being paranoid. Probably. That night, after Jenna fell asleep, I snuck downstairs and checked her secret phone. The messages between her and George had taken on a frantic tone. He knows something, George had written, the way he looked at me today. He knows. Jenna's response, "You're being paranoid. Kurt's not that smart." Then explain the car problems. Explain the complaints at work. This stuff doesn't just happen. Maybe you're just having a run of bad luck. I don't believe in coincidences. Not this many. So what do you want to do? Maybe we should cool things off for a while. Until this blows over. Absolutely not. I'm not going to let Kurt intimidate us. Easy for you to say. You're not the one whose life is falling apart. Your life isn't falling apart. You're just being dramatic. 3 customer complaints in 1 week, Jenna. My boss is talking about letting me go. So find another job. It's not that simple. Word gets around in this business. I put the phone back where I'd found it and went back to bed, smiling in the darkness. The pressure was working. George was starting to crack, and Jenna was getting frustrated with his weakness. Soon, they'd start turning on each other, and when that happened, I'd be ready with the final phase of my plan. By the middle of the following week, George's paranoia had reached new heights. According to Tommy at the Rusty Nail, George had started taking different routes to work, checking under his car hood every morning, and asking other mechanics to look at his electrical system. Guy's acting like someone's out to get him, Tommy told me over beers. Keeps talking about sabotage and conspiracies. Honestly, I think he's losing it. That's too bad. George always seemed pretty level-headed to me. Not anymore. Yesterday he accused the kid who washes cars of messing with his battery. Kid's like 17 years old and scared of his own shadow. I shook my head sympathetically. Sounds like George is under a lot of stress. Yeah, well, it's affecting his work too. Made a mess of Mrs. Patterson's brake job last week. Boss is about ready to fire him. Perfect. The professional pressure was mounting, and George was making it worse with his increasingly erratic behavior. All I had to do was keep applying gentle pressure and let him self-destruct. At home, things were getting tense between Jenna and me. The banking restrictions were causing daily friction, and she was starting to ask more pointed questions about our finances. "I tried to pay for Carrie's school supplies today," she told me Thursday night, "and my card was declined again. This is getting embarrassing, Kurt. I'll call the bank tomorrow and get it sorted out." "You said that last week." I know. They keep saying it's a computer issue, but I'll go down there in person and demand they fix it." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the suspicion growing in her eyes. "Are we having money problems? Is the business in trouble?" "No, nothing like that. Business is actually pretty good right now." "Then why can't I access our money? It's just a temporary banking issue. These things happen." But she wasn't buying it anymore. That night, I heard her on the phone in the bedroom, speaking in hushed tones to someone, probably George, or maybe her sister in Buffalo. The next morning, I got to the lot early and found Anna already there, going through paperwork. "You're here early," I said. "Couldn't sleep. My neighbor's dog was barking all night." She looked up from the invoices. "Your wife called yesterday after you left, asked about the business finances. What did you tell her?" "That she'd have to talk to you about that stuff. But Kurt, she seemed pretty upset, like she was fishing for information about something specific." I poured myself coffee from the pot Anna always kept brewing and sat down at my desk. "She's probably just worried about the banking issues we've been having." "Is that what you're calling it?" Anna had worked for me long enough to know when I was being evasive. She also had a talent for reading between the lines. "Let's just say Jenna and I are going through a rough patch, and she's starting to ask questions about things that are none of her business." "Like what kind of things?" I hesitated, then decided Anna deserved to know at least part of the truth. She'd been loyal to me, and if things got messy, I might need her support. "Like why I've restricted her access to our joint accounts. Like why I've been asking questions about George Riker around town." Anna's eyes sharpened. "George? That sleazy mechanic who used to hang around here?" "That's the one. What's he got to do with anything?" "Let's just say he's been getting a little too friendly with my wife." Anna sat back in her chair, processing this information. "How friendly?" "Friendly enough that they've been meeting at motels and planning my financial ruin." "That piece of garbage." Anna's voice had taken on a hard edge. "What do you need me to do?" "Just keep doing what you're doing. Run the business, keep an eye on things, and let me know if Jenna calls asking questions." "You got it, boss." That afternoon, I decided it was time to escalate things. I drove to George's garage and waited in the parking lot until he came outside for a smoke break. "Hey, George," I called out, rolling down my window. "How's the car running?" He looked around nervously, then walked over to my truck. "What do you want, Kurt?" "Just checking on an old friend. Heard you've been having some work problems, too." His face flushed red. "Stay out of my business." "I'm not in your business, George. But word gets around in a small town. People talk." "What people?" "Customers, mostly. Seems like there have been some complaints about your work quality." "Those complaints are garbage, and you know it." "Do I? I mean, I haven't seen your work lately. Not since you stopped coming around the house." The mention of my house made him flinch. "I've been busy." "Too busy to fix cars properly?" "My work is fine." "If you say so. But maybe you should be more careful about who you upset. Some people have long memories and short tempers." I put the truck in gear and started to drive away, then stopped and rolled down the window again. "Oh, and George? Give my regards to Jenna next time you see her." The look on his face told me everything I needed to know. Pure panic mixed with guilt and fear. He knew that I knew, and he was terrified about what I might do with that knowledge. That evening, Jenna was waiting for me when I got home. She was sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of bank statements and credit card bills spread out in front of her. "We need to talk," she said. I hung up my jacket and poured myself a glass of water. "Sure. What's up?" "I've been going through our finances and I want to know why you've restricted my access to our accounts." I told you, it's a banking issue. No, it's not. I called the bank myself today. You specifically requested the restrictions. I sat down across from her and looked at the paperwork she'd assembled. She'd been thorough, I had to give her that. Bank statements, credit card bills, even some business receipts. You're right, I said. I did request the restrictions. Why? Because I've been noticing some unusual spending patterns, and I wanted to make sure our accounts were secure. What kind of unusual spending patterns? I reached across the table and pulled out a credit card statement, pointing to several restaurant charges. These, for instance, restaurants I've never been to on days when you said you were working late. She glanced at the charges, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not quite panic, but close. Those are work-related. I told you, sometimes I have to eat dinner when I'm doing inventory. At the Sunset Motel restaurant? The color drained from her face. What? This charge here, Sunset Motel restaurant. Funny thing is, I drove by there last week and they don't have a restaurant, just rooms. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Jenna stared at the statement, her mind racing to come up with an explanation. I don't know what that charge is, she said finally. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe. Or maybe you want to tell me what you were really doing at the Sunset Motel. She stood up abruptly, gathering the papers. I don't have to listen to this. If you don't trust me, that's your problem. Trust is earned, Jenna, and lately you haven't been earning it. She stormed out of the kitchen, leaving me sitting alone with the evidence of her betrayal spread across the table. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm, focused, ready for the final phase of my plan. Upstairs, I could hear her on the phone, probably calling George to warn him that I was closing in. Let them panic. Let them scramble to cover their tracks. It was too late for damage control. The trap was set, and all I had to do now was spring it. The breaking point came on a Friday night in late October. I'd been patient, methodical, slowly tightening the screws on both Jenna and George for weeks. But patience has its limits, and I'd reached mine. George had lost his job at the garage that morning. According to Tommy, the final straw was when he'd accused another mechanic of sabotaging his toolbox. His boss had finally had enough of the paranoia and erratic behavior. Jenna, meanwhile, had become increasingly desperate about our financial situation. The banking restrictions were making her daily life difficult, and she was starting to realize that her plan A might not be as solid as she'd thought. That evening, she made one last attempt to salvage the situation. Kurt, she said as we sat in the living room after dinner, I think we should go to counseling. I looked up from the newspaper I was pretending to read. Counseling? Marriage counseling. We've been having problems, and I think it might help if we talk to someone. What kind of problems? She shifted uncomfortably on the couch. Communication problems, trust issues, the usual stuff. Trust issues? What don't you trust about me? It's not... maybe we both have trust issues. I folded the newspaper and gave her my full attention. Are you saying you don't trust me, or you're saying I shouldn't trust you? I'm saying maybe we should work on our marriage before it's too late. Too late for what? She couldn't answer that question without admitting things she wasn't ready to admit. So she just sat there, looking miserable and trapped. I think counseling is a great idea, I said finally. But first, I think you should tell me about George. The words hung in the air like smoke. Jenna's face went white, and her hands started to shake. What about George? You tell me. I don't know what you mean. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out her secret phone, set it on the coffee table between us. Then maybe this will refresh your memory. She stared at the phone like it was a poisonous snake. Where did you get that? From your dresser drawer. Interesting reading. Very educational. You went through my things? I went through my cheating wife's things. There's a difference. She reached for the phone, but I was faster. I picked it up and scrolled to one of the more damaging message threads. Let's see. Here's a good one. Can't wait to be free of him. You're everything he's not. That's you talking about me to my former friend. Kurt, I can explain. Or how about this one? He was never the plan, just something to fall back on until the right guy came along. Plan B, right? That's what I was to you. Tears started rolling down her cheeks, but I wasn't done. And my personal favorite, Kurt's so predictable, he'll never see it coming. Except I did see it coming, Jenna. I saw all of it. She collapsed back onto the couch, sobbing. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry you got caught, or sorry you did it? Both. I never meant for it to happen. Which part? The cheating, or the planning to take half my assets and leave me looking like the bad guy? We weren't going to take anything that wasn't rightfully mine. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Rightfully yours? You work part-time at a bookstore, Jenna. I built this life. I bought this house. I started the business that pays for everything you touch. I'm your wife. I have rights. You're my cheating wife. That changes things. She wiped her eyes and tried to compose herself. What do you want? I want you to pack your things and get out of my house. What about Carrie? Carrie stays with me. You can have visitation rights if you can prove you're a fit mother. You can't do that. Watch me. She stood up, anger replacing the tears. I'll fight you. I'll get a lawyer. Go ahead. I've got months of evidence of your affair, your plans to defraud me, and your complete disregard for our daughter's well-being. Good luck explaining that to a judge. George and I, we love each other. George and you deserve each other. Speaking of which, you might want to call him. He lost his job today. Her face crumpled. What? Turns out his work quality had been slipping lately. Too many customer complaints. His boss finally fired him. You did this. You've been sabotaging him. I didn't sabotage anyone, Jenna. I just made sure the right people knew about his shoddy work and bad attitude. The rest took care of itself. You're destroying his life. He destroyed mine first. I'm just returning the favor. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. This isn't over, Kurt. Yes, it is. It's been over for months. I just didn't know it yet. After she left, I sat in my living room for a long time, holding her secret phone and thinking about the past 15 years. The good times and the bad times, the dreams we'd shared, and the promises we'd broken. Carrie came downstairs around 10 o'clock, looking worried. Where's Mom? She went to stay with a friend for a while. We're having some problems. Are you getting divorced? I looked at my daughter, this smart, beautiful girl who was going to have to deal with the consequences of her mother's choices. I don't know yet, sweetheart. But whatever happens, you and I are going to be okay. She nodded, but I could see the fear in her eyes. Is it because of that man who came to see Mom at the bookstore? Smart kid. Too smart for her own good. What man? The one with the old car. I saw them together when I was walking home from school. They were holding hands. When was this? A few weeks ago. I didn't say anything because I thought maybe they were just friends. I pulled her into a hug and held her tight. You didn't do anything wrong, Carrie. Sometimes adults make bad choices and kids get caught in the middle. I love you, Dad. I love you too, kiddo. More than you'll ever know. After Carrie went to bed, I poured myself a whiskey and sat on my back porch, looking up at the stars. My marriage was over, my friendship with George was destroyed, and my daughter's world had been turned upside down. But for the first time in months, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Peace. I wasn't Plan B anymore. I wasn't anyone's backup plan or safety net or consolation prize. I was just Kurt Kaminsky, used car dealer, single father, and survivor of betrayal. And that was enough. The next morning, I woke up to find Jenna's car in the driveway and her key on the kitchen counter. She'd come back while I was sleeping to get some clothes and personal items. There was a note on the table. I'll be staying with George until we figure things out. We need to talk about custody and finances. I crumpled up the note and threw it in the trash. There would be lawyers and court dates and custody arrangements to work out. There would be difficult conversations with Carrie and awkward encounters around town. But the war was over, and I had won. Not because I'd destroyed their relationship or ruined George's career or humiliated Jenna in front of her friends. I'd won because I'd refused to be anyone's plan B ever again. And that victory, small as it might seem to some people, felt like everything to me.